all about the hiring process, just like the recruiting process.
Yeah.
You know, it was defining the things that were important to what our culture needed to be. So, you know, in the interview process, we spent so much more time on how they were going to deal with the student athletes. You know, the two things that we recruit on and promise: great relationships and holistic development. Those are the two things that we promise in recruiting. And if you can't meet the standard that goes into those two things, I mean, there are layers and layers in each of those categories. If you can't meet that, then you're not the right guy for us.
Welcome to Inside the Headset, presented by CoachComm. Each episode pulls back the curtain on the coaching profession, spotlighting voices from every level of the game and offering lessons and insights for your own path. But first, a word from CoachComm.
When the game's on the line, your play call can mean the difference between winning and losing. Don't let poor communication cost you the game. For 35 years, CoachComm has been the trusted leader in coaching communication, delivering solutions with unmatched sound quality, performance, and durability. That's why thousands of coaches in high schools across the country trust CoachComm. You put in the hours to prepare. Make sure your communication delivers when it counts. CoachComm, giving coaches the ultimate competitive edge. Visit CoachComm.com to learn more.
Follow Inside the Headset on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe to our YouTube channel for exclusive content. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like and leave a review. It really helps others discover the show. We drop new episodes each week, so hit that follow button and never miss a moment. Now, let's get inside the headset.
Coach Ekkens, how we doing, man?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, man, I'm excited about diving in with you, man. Really excited about the playing career stuff because I didn't realize you were such a baller in college. I know you don't like to talk about that too much, but I'm about to brag on you, man. As we kind of get your career started and just really talk about this heck of a journey that you've been able to have as a ball coach. And every time that we start a podcast off, we always start with, when did you know you want to be a ball coach?
Yeah, I think for me it was, I chose to go to Mount Union knowing I wanted to be a coach. You know, there's a Coach Larry Karras, the coaching tree that's come from him is remarkable, right? And when I was going through the recruiting process, I thought I was probably a Division II level player. Wanted to be an FBS guy. You know, my brother and dad played at Central Michigan, and I wanted to play there. When I figured out I wasn't really looking at playing Division III football. And then Mount Union was pretty late in the process for me. And I ended up there, and I chose there because of the conversation I had with Coach Karras. He asked what I wanted to do. I said I wanted to be a high school teacher and coach, and he talked me through exactly what he had done for other people and how that looked. And man, I was inspired. And I've known for a long time.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, like I said, I was going to brag real fast on your playing career there. Obviously, a part of the 4 national championships consecutively. A 2-year starter, All-American, Remington Award winner, 57-3 record as a player. And obviously, I'm kind of pushing your buttons a little bit because I know you don't talk about that stuff much, but one of the interesting things when I talk to these Mount Union guys, when I talk to the North Dakota State guys that, have had the opportunity to win multiple national championships, either as a player or a young coach, as you entered the profession, was there anything that, that any kind of awakening that you had in your career when you realized, hey man, this stuff is not easy. It's not easy to go and win these games, and then almost kind of even put Larry Karras up a little higher on that pedestal when you realize that, man, it's hard to be consistently good.
Yeah, I think the thing for me was going and being a graduate assistant at Akron. When I was there, we were turning the program around, and my first season we were battling to make it to a bowl game and missed out. Went 5-7, just really close. And then the second year we made that bowl game, and just the appreciation that the team had. I think we finished with an 8-5 record, and those were my first 2 years outside of the Mount Union network. And man, it's winning football games at times can be really hard. Yeah. And I always appreciated the process at Mount Union. We never took it for granted. And every game, every day, I mean, you're surrounded by elite people. I ended up getting some accolades, my junior and senior year, but man, I was on offensive lines with guys that were better than I was, and you're playing not just with good players, but elite minded people. And I think that the thing that I learned most there.
Yeah. So kind of going back to your career here chronologically, you get done playing. Obviously, I kind of bragged on you a little bit. Was there any appetite to try to extend that playing career, or were you kind of ready to dive into the profession pretty quickly?
I was ready to dive in. I knew that I went there for a purpose. I wanted to become a high school coach is what I thought I was going to do. But if it wasn't going to be the NFL, then I wasn't really interested in continuing to play. And I started helping out. I mean, my second semester of my senior year, I was in the weight room every day and out at every practice, and they let me get my feet wet right away. And then that summer, I was intending, so I had to finish my degree the fifth fall that I was there, and I was going to be a student coach, but I was going to do my student teaching and get my high school teaching certificate, go be a high school teacher and coach. And Coach Karras called and said, "Hey, we've got a job offer for you to come be." We call them intern coaches, not GAs. There wasn't a GA program back then. And I said, "Okay, well, can I do my student teaching as well?" And he said, "Well, you're gonna be working, right?" Yeah. And I said, "Okay, well, let me think about it." And the thing he said to me, I never forgot. He said, "Well, you can go be a teacher that coaches, or you can be a coach that teaches. It's up to you." And I think I hung up and maybe called him back a minute later, and I was all in on the college thing, yeah. And that's how my direction got changed, and that's how quickly it changed.
Right. That was kind of going to be my next question was, I've obviously done a lot of these podcasts, and you hear a lot of guys that say, "Man, I want to be a college coach," and they only ever coach high school, and they love every minute of it. And you're kind of the opposite of that whole deal. I wanted to be a high school coach, and you never touched that. And so that kind of conversation was that impactful, and that opportunity obviously was that impactful. So what did that next year entail, that 2012 and 2013 year for you?
Yeah, we had so my senior year, the 2011 season, we lost our third consecutive national championship. So we won it my freshman year. It was an awesome experience, and then fell short. The 3 years following that, was really disappointing. At a place like that, your expectations are so high, and so getting into coaching, that 2012 class was driven. And I started out helping in the weight room. I was the assistant offensive line coach. And by the summer, the head strength coach had left, the assistant had left, and I end up, Coach Karras pulls me in, and we have a conversation, and I end up running our strength and conditioning program. And I just finished playing, and that was the first time in my career where I was, I wouldn't say overwhelmed. I guess I was a little bit ignorant to what I was being given. Like, I was just like, I'm going to go run the strength program. I think back on that, and it's like, whoa, that was a big responsibility. And
no question.
It was awesome for me to have to take that leadership role right away, coming off from being a player. And what a great opportunity, and that team won national championship, the 2012 team. And then 13, I was in the same role, head strength coach and assistant offensive line coach.
Now, I have the opportunity often to ask the question about, transitioning to a GA or entry level, worker at your institution that you just got through playing at. And, so imagine me asking the question to a guy that just got through playing running back, and now he's coaching running back. So he's responsible for 7 or 8 guys, and he has to balance that relationship as the head strength and conditioning coach, where you're telling guys to do something that's pretty dang hard. And sometimes you got to put your foot down, and it's not just guys. It's all, I don't know how many guys you guys kind of had in the program at any given time, but I would imagine around 150, give or take 50 either way. Man, that's a big responsibility, and has to come with a big leap in maturity for yourself, when you're responsible for that kind of role, because you can't be in there clowning with the guys like you were, maybe clowning with them on a Friday night, just a year ago, just a few months ago in some instances. So how did you draw that line in the sand and say, hey, you know what, this is my job now?
Yeah, I think the unique thing about that place is there's been so many guys that went from playing to coaching, right? So being in that environment as a player, you saw it regularly. You saw a guy finish up, and then now he's your coach. And it didn't mean that you couldn't have a great relationship, but the relationship changed. So that made it a little bit easier. But then you get in there and you're running a strength and conditioning program, and there's good and bad days, and I think the thing that I always appreciate is those guys on the 2012 team being so receptive to the fact that they were so driven that you could tell them to do whatever you wanted to do and they were going to go attack it. And I was really fortunate in that regard that they didn't push back much. And they're my best friends, and that was a challenge. But they didn't make it into a mountain. It was day to day building those relationships, and they knew I wanted what was best for them. And so that really helped. And then I think when people see you working for the things that you're doing, just like us as coaches, when you see a player that's worked really hard, you look at and you want that person to succeed.
Absolutely.
They had seen me transition into this coaching role and working really hard and wanted, me to succeed as well. So I think the feeling was mutual there.
And, me being the director of education, I always got to ask kind of an education question. Obviously you had lifted weights your whole life, so you were familiar with the weight room, but you never programmed, for a group of people. And, I don't know exactly what your degree was in, but, even if it was in that kinesiology area, you're still lacking quite a bit of knowledge. Like, how did you go make sure every time you went to that weight room, you were prepared to get these guys a workout that ultimately helped them, be 2012 national championship winners?
Yeah, it started with my best friend, all the way through college, and still, one of my best friends to this day, Matt Gildersleeve. He's the head strength coach at Kansas for football, the director. His title's super long. He's the director of human performance at Kansas for football, and he was passionate. I mean, man, we were high school teammates, we were college teammates, went to Mount Union together. He was in a role at that time where he was at Akron, the University of Akron already as a graduate assistant, and was doing a great job there. And as soon as they said, hey, you're going to be running the strength and conditioning program, I called him and I said, hey, I need to know where to start, because the implementation of it, I felt really good about. We had always worked really hard. I was not concerned about the motivation of the team. But the programming, him and the head strength coach there at the time helped me with the programming. And then honestly, with the timeline on when it happened, I didn't change the program up too much until that next spring. The fall we kind of went as is, and then that next spring was when we really made some adjustments, and it was awesome. It was challenging, like I said, a lot of phone calls to my guy Matt, and he was a big help.
You said something that I think it'd be bad for me if I skip the gravity of that position as a strength and conditioning coach, because you kind of said I didn't realize what he was handing me kind of the keys to at that point in time. And, you've seen these articles, at least I have, over the years, where they talk about your strength and conditioning coach spends more time with your team than most of most of the coaches on the whole staff, head coach included. What do you think that you did, and this is a tough question because you might not have an answer for it, that allowed for Coach Karras. Once again, you already kind of said that he's ultimately promoted tons of coaches and players to coaches, but what do you think that you did in that short period of time as a coach slash assistant there, assistant strength and conditioning coach, that impressed him enough to allow for you to have such a huge role in the development of that program?
Yeah, I think the thing that was honestly remarkable going from player to coach with Coach Karras was he empowered a lot of us. There was young guys doing roles. I look at it now in a different perspective, being a head coach. The things that we were asked to do are things that you really have to trust people to empower them to do, right? So one, he would always challenge and guide you. He'd give everybody something that was going to really make them work, right? And my role, the way I looked at it, was to run the strength and conditioning program. And I think being consistent as a player, I was somebody who was incredibly driven to do the right thing and work as hard as I possibly could, and wanted to outwork everybody. And I prioritized trying to be the very best I could be, and then did the same, attacked coaching in the same way. And I think, it's not like it was exclusive. There was a bunch of guys doing it, which makes it even easier. But that trust piece, once he trusted me to do that, there was no way on earth I was going to let him down, and I was going to do anything that it took to lead that program when it was my turn to lead. And that was, every day when the weight room sessions and cardio and conditioning and sprint work, all those times, was a great opportunity to lead.
Yeah. Now, you're 22, 23 at this point in time. And I think the beauty of this podcast a little bit is that everything isn't cookie cutter, right? You had some early success, been able to, be the head strength and conditioning coach, win a national championship. And sometimes that kind of helps you kind of be early to the call. And honestly, your next job, you end up getting promoted to be a full-time offensive line coach there, one of the youngest in the nation, but you mentioned Akron. How were you able to kind of put a period at the end of that chapter? Or let me say, I guess you won a national championship, an exclamation point at the end of that sentence there at Mount Union and decide to go take that GA role there at Akron rather than, sticking around?
Yeah, the people I was working with at Mount Union were great. Jeff Dart, still somebody that I've stayed really close with, a great friend of mine. Chris Kappus was there at the time, and Chris had just come back from being a GA at Bowling Green. Yeah. And I was working with both of those guys in 2013 on the offensive side of the ball. So lots of conversations with them. And then 2013 was the first year Vince Karras was the head coach. Larry Karras retired after the 12 season. But all of them knew and had conversations with me, hey, go and chase. If you want to coach at the highest level, then pursue that. Yeah. And we'll help you as we can. And that was something I've always appreciated is those conversations weren't off the table, and I've tried to do that as a head coach now is I don't want that to be taboo to come in and conversate about what you want in the coaching profession. So they really pushed me to pursue those things after my second season there as an intern coach, as a strength coach and assistant O-line coach. And I'm glad that they did support me through that and educate me on what that looked like. Yeah. I was walking into a situation that was I was going to be working just as hard as I was in the role that I was in at Mount Union.
And so, what were the steps, I guess, for you to kind of get out of that umbrella of Mount Union, which you had been at for 6-7 years at this point in time, to reach out to Akron, get the job? Did you interview? Kind of how did that go down?
Yeah, so my best friend again at the time, Matt Gildersleeve's in the strength and conditioning role there as a graduate assistant, and he had been promoted right during the time they were looking for an offensive line GA. So knowing him, I had been there to visit with the strength and conditioning coach. I'd met the staff already, and I knew that the GA there was planning to leave at the time, the offensive line GA. So I worked hard at that relationship. And in the meantime, the offensive line coach that was at Akron actually passed away, which was, man, that was a tough deal for everybody that was there. John Peterson comes in. He's the new offensive line coach. There was a little bit of a freeze there for a minute. And it took me I interviewed, I think I was up there for 3 or 4 spring practices at the time, going up and being around the staff and trying to get my foot in the door. Matt put his name on the line for me and end up getting the job there. But I had to pursue it. And I think a lot of times you think jobs will come to you. John Peterson gave me great advice after I got the job. He said, if you want something, everybody's got to know that you want that job.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You've got to go above and beyond. So that's how that looked.
Well, that's a huge gem right there alone, just, because that's the realness of it. And it's easy to kind of look at the bio, go to your website and just kind of look, everything was upward trajectory, everything, I don't want to say easy, but, man, there's a lot of grind and grit that kind of comes into even getting a GA role at Akron at that time. And so, this is your first time kind of stepping away from this Larry Karras legacy of, culture and winning and all this kind of stuff. What was kind of the eye-opening fact of 2 things? Number one, having the role as an offensive GA at the FBS level. And then number 2, just getting around a new culture, and trying to figure it out, trying to build this thing like the way it ended up being for a couple of years later.
Yeah, I think the exciting thing was that the culture was being built. It wasn't built yet. So there were highs and lows all over the place, and it was the Mount Union tree. The Mount Union football program is remarkable in the fact that the culture has been passed down and they continue to reinforce it. The coaches do a great job with that, but you get somewhere new and it's not just passed down. It's got to be exemplified through the coaches into the leadership of the team and then from the leadership of the team into the rest of the team. So, it was different. It was very different. But the same things that make any program successful make all programs successful, right? it was the commitment to doing the things the right way and working hard. And that was something I felt like coming in as a graduate assistant, I was prepared for. I was highly prepared to come in and work as hard as I could and build relationships with the guys in that offensive line room and build trust. And I got to do a lot of coaching, which was great. John Peterson, and then my second year, Daryl Funk, those guys both let me coach. I mean, every day it was splitting up O-line individual, and I was coaching. And then we get to scout team, and I'm running the scout team. So you build relationships with a lot of people, and you have influence even in those graduate assistant roles. And sometimes you don't feel like you do.
Yeah.
But man, there were some brutal days where you're working your tail off and feeling like you're not getting anywhere. And
Right.
And then there's the days where all things are clicking. But I would say this, I became really fortunate after that second season as a graduate assistant. But I was days away from taking a Division III offensive line job when the job presented itself. I didn't see it as something that, as being lucky. I was in the right place at the right time and had worked really hard and demonstrated that I was ready for the job.
Yeah.
And then again, that little smidge of luck, or as I call it, God's plan,
Right.
For me to be in that place. I became fortunate and was one of the youngest position coaches in the country, which was great. But again, had I not been prepped for that through what I was given at Mount Union early on, I wasn't overwhelmed by that promotion at Akron.
Yeah, that's funny. That's something I don't think we've ever really talked about on the podcast, is like that term lucky. Because I mean, you like I said, you can roll through tons of bios and you can see a guy that may have just looked like he's the luckiest man on earth, but I mean, there's some preparation. There is something that goes into these opportunities and then timing and that part of it. And like you said, you're 3 days away from maybe taking a job and not even getting this opportunity. Just talk real quick about how this opportunity presented itself, how it went down, and then honestly, obviously I know you're the humble head ball coach at this point in time, but in that moment, man, I mean, you're getting promoted to be a full-time FBS coach. I was one of the young guys to get to do it, man. I was ecstatic. What were kind of the emotions that kind of went along with that promotion as well?
Yeah, I was through the roof. And again, I was doing interviews at that point at some different Division III and Division II level schools, and really appreciative of those interviews. I was excited to go and have a chance to run my own room, and I wanted to coach football. Yeah. I was a graduate assistant role, and you'd help recruiting, all the guys on the road, you're calling and you're doing all the things that you can do. But I wanted to be the guy in that chair, and I wanted to have an opportunity to run the room. So when that happened, man, I was elated. It was unbelievable feeling. And I think the thing that really helped was, that I had built relationships with all the guys in that O-line room, at Akron in 2016 when that happened. Were fired up that I was going to be their coach. Even though they came into play for, somebody else. Yeah. That was great that they gave me the stamp of approval and bought into what we were doing, right away. But yeah, it was years. It was 2 years of doing all the work, anything that's asked of you, and that's the thing that people don't see is it does look like someone's rising fast. And I was in that position at that time, and I've got a group chat with 7 guys I GA'd with, and man, we stay in contact today. Yeah. And there's 2 guys coaching in the NFL, and there's a few guys at the FBS level. And, it's funny how everybody, all of us were wired in the same way. Now I got my opportunity early, but I think the thing that is the standard is those guys worked their entire 2 years as hard as they could. Yeah. I just happened the timing was right for me. But I would give this advice to anybody who's in a GA role. Don't think that the task that you're given is too small or too large for you. Whatever you're given, if you're asked to go run to get food for the staff, man, go and run and get food for the staff with the detail that you would do if you were asked to game plan or practice plan. Come back with everybody's order right and own the jobs you're given. And I think you do that over the course of 2 years, and you get to the point where, can this guy run the room? Right. Well, yes, he's run to go get food, and when we've asked him to run to do Indy, he's done a great job with Indy. Absolutely. If we've asked him to run the scout team, he's run the scout team. So I think it's at times we all sit back and go, they've had it easy, and I don't believe that with anybody. It takes work.
Absolutely. What's funny is the amount of times, and especially when you start naming some of the names that you had the opportunity to work with. Chris Kappas, he's awesome, man. He's a former 35 and 35 guy. Who was the OC at Coach Dart, who's the head coach there now. Coach Dart, phenomenal, another 35 and 35 guy. And I some of the coolest stories when I get on this podcast, when you say the thing that you just said, is like, it was 7 of us back there behind the wall. Nobody knew your names. When you guys won games, nobody thought about you guys. And then now you're all blossoming, having heck of careers. It would be pretty cool to like make a show just with a group of guys and follow them through their careers, just to see how everything kind of blossoms out. But man, that's phenomenal. So you get promoted to the offensive line coach, and I think what's really special about that group of 7 is, man, I mean, even you guys are changing the culture, what it looks like behind those doors as graduate assistants, because ultimately in that 2017 season, you guys win the MAC East championship, which Akron has had its moments for sure, but it's a tough place to win and consistently win, and just kind of be able to be a part of some of that success that's happened there is huge. So now you're the offensive line coach. I believe you're recruiting coordinator as well. Just how did you kind of ultimately end up maturing and being able to be a 24, 25-year-old, 26 year old FBS offensive line coach, recruiting coordinator, that a lot of young guys are looking up to and wanting to say, man, I want to be that guy?
Yeah, I think being surrounded by great people, it goes back to, so AJ Milwee was on that staff. He was our offensive coordinator. He's another 35 under 35 guy. Corey Gribben was either that year, I think he was his last year as a graduate assistant, and then he was our tight ends coach the next year. He's another guy that was in that group, 35 under 35. And so you're surrounded by driven people. Matt Gildersleeve, I've already talked about him and his he's been a rocket ship. I mean, he's done some great things. He's one of the best in the business in the strength world. So you're surrounded by elite people. And that was one of the things that I would give him. I'd tip my cap to him the most, is he lived his life every day down in the weight room, like every day was the national championship. And I think that rubs off on you. And then him being a great friend, the days where I wasn't at my best, where I was down in the dumps, he'd come up and we'd have real conversations and push each other. And I think anytime you're in an environment where people can hold each other accountable and push each other, you're going to continue to get better. And the kids see that too. In our program, our coaching staff, we try to have that same mentality, take the ego out of it, and let's all try to get better together and challenge each other.
Yeah,
so
no doubt.
Yeah.
Well, after your time there at Akron, you had the opportunity to return to the head strength and conditioning role. And once again, I got a feeling you're going to be surrounded by some really good guys here too. I know Indiana Wesleyan has been good to that 35 under 35 program with some really good people there. And it's relatively new at this point in time, right? Might have been the first couple years of the program, but you get the opportunity to be the O-line coach, run game coordinator, head strength and conditioning coach. What led to that opportunity for you to take that?
Yeah, honestly, it was us getting fired was the start of it. So, after the 2018 season, it's a thing that I hadn't experienced yet, and the thing all of us in coaching, I mean, it's one of those items you don't talk about much. Like we underperform, we go 4-8, which at you look at Akron and you go, it's 4-8 that bad? Well, coming off of a conference championship or a MAC East championship the year before, it wasn't to the standard. We started that 2018 season out hot and beat Northwestern on the road, and I think they won the Big Ten West that year. So we're thinking, man, I remember having a conversation with my wife, like, wow, Coach Bowden's he's going to get another job. We just came off doing something that only been done once in school history. And then you fast forward, 3 months later, and you're being passed that letter by the AD saying, hey, you got to find a job. So the beautiful thing about that was J.J. Clark, another guy who's been a part of the 35 under 35. He's one of my best friends and he's a part of that 7-person group chat that I was talking about earlier. But he had just accepted the job at Indiana Wesleyan to be the defensive coordinator. And he actually ran the strength program the first 2 years we were there. I helped him, but man, he was hitting me up like, you got to come work with us. Jordan Langs, another 35 under 35 guy, was the head coach at Indiana Wesleyan. And I think, again, I go back to I'm a believer in my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ And sometimes all the doors you want to walk through need to be closed for you to walk through the right door.
Yeah.
And the right door was Indiana Wesleyan. At that time, being surrounded by, being a part of a program being built from the ground up, seeing what great looks like at Mount Union, that's awesome. Then going to Akron and seeing taking a program that struggled and making it good. That's a great experience, right? Then you go to Indiana Wesleyan and it's a brand new startup program, and you get to be a part of building it from I got there in right before year 2. It was the first season that we were actually a recognized team, and taking those freshmen and sophomores and for 3 years building that thing into something special, getting to see Coach Lang's vision there. Like, I learned so much that prepared me to be a head coach. I think that was one of the coolest things, is the disappointment of being fired and having to find a job, to look back on it now and say, hey, just stay focused on the day to day, and you're going to keep getting better. Don't pout.
Right. Now, the getting fired thing, right? That like you said, it's just kind of the ugly part of the profession you don't talk much about. All of us have experience, and if you haven't, you will, type situation. And obviously you look back at your probably previous 10 years, in the profession. I might be stretching that a little bit. Yeah. But your previous 10 years, you came off 6 national championships in a row, right? Winning the first and winning the last, and getting to them in between, to going to Akron, getting promoted, winning the conference, to very shortly, which is super disappointing when I see this. And then you kind of continue to look at the lineage of what's happened at the place since then. But, very, very quickly, you're getting fired. What was the emotions kind of in that, 1 month, 2 month waiting period where you're trying to figure out what's next?
Yeah, that was difficult. We the last couple weeks of the season, there were some rumblings, and I was blessed to be on a staff with guys that were experienced. There were so many great coaches that were there or had been there. Chuck Amato was our DC the first 4 years I was there. Like, you're surrounded by Todd Stroud was a guy that had been through it, and there's so many different guys there that had knowledge and had been through it before. So as it was coming, kind of that last Sunday, the day after our last game, they're kind of like, hey, if we don't get a call, we're going to be okay. Yeah. And I remember driving back I just run to the supermarket, was going to try to cook for my wife after, a long season, and driving back and got that call, hey, staff meeting, at such and such a time. And so, you drive in and it's really big letdown. But at that point, I had 3 years as an offensive line coach at the FBS level. I wasn't overly concerned. I don't think I knew how hard it was going to be to find the next spot, because I wanted to stay at the FBS level and wanted to be a position coach still. And every day, again, being around good people, Matt and I, my friend I've referenced many times, he was looking for a job too. We'd go to a coffee shop and sit down and work. Corey Gribben was in the same boat. There was guys that really we went through the process together, trying to find that next spot. And that was a difficult situation. I think harder on my wife, always harder on the family. I was confident we'd find something good and be in the right spot for us. But what that requires is moving. We love living in Akron and still love visiting. We know some people that still live there near my wife's family. She's from the Youngstown area. So, picking up and moving our young family. We'd just been married, didn't have any kids yet, but that's the challenge. More than finding the job is, once you find the job, you're going away. She's a teacher. She's finishing the year, and you're going to work. Yeah. And the highs and lows there. And I ended up with a couple interviews. One was Indiana Wesleyan, and then getting a chance to do I did a video interview with the Green Bay Packers. Obviously, I really wanted that job, and was hopeful for that job. Wasn't ready for it, right. And ultimately it wasn't in God's plan, and you end up in Marion, Indiana, working at Indiana Wesleyan. And again, it's looking back on it, it wasn't easy, and it was a great 3 years from a coaching standpoint. But my wife didn't love living there. Moving from the state she'd lived in her whole life, Ohio, to Indiana, doesn't seem like a big deal. Those are the things that were really, really tough. Yeah. But yeah, no question that God doesn't make mistakes.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going to allude to on the next part, because you said something that I can relate to. I got almost the very similar story. I went GA at ULM, which Coach Bowden ended up at shortly after that. Got promoted. One of the youngest receiver coaches in the country. Had a huge season, and then it kind of went down from there. We got fired, and I wanted to be an FBS coach again, of course, right? And then ultimately I ended up with an FCS non-scholarship position group, and I wasn't fired up walking into it. Just being brutally honest, I got there, and it was I met some amazing people, people that I keep up with, and you realize, man, things happen for a reason. And there's a reason that I went there and met those amazing people. Like, so when you said the FBS part, because I can only imagine, like, that's the next job you get, right? You were one of the youngest in the country, did a hell of a job at it, and so that was going to be the next job, and you end up basically at a startup NAI program. But how helpful was that for you, now that you sit in that chair, to have that experience as you're trying to figure things out with Coach Langs and everybody else?
It was unbelievable, and I think you look back at Coach Langs. I've worked for some great people, some really great people, right? Some legends. And I think the thing I look at with Jordan Langs is his ability to inspire and lead was like nothing I'd ever seen before. Recruiting the classes, we had no business recruiting the classes that we were recruiting. Facilities were great, but that only gets you so far. And it's being around the people that you're around. It made it, immediately I walked in and knew that the guys that were in those offices were about business. Yeah. I mean, it was, I've never been pushed like that before. I mean, it was an elite group of people, and, it was 3 years. Eric Terrazas was the offensive coordinator. Him and I worked so well together. But it was a place that people were striving to learn and grow, and it was active. JJ Clark and Eric, those two were the coordinators. And every off season, the amount of presentations and studies and things we were doing was like nowhere I've been. And the way we were operating was as if our offensive staff was 10 and there was 5 of us, and it's like those things I wouldn't trade for the world, because the amount that you could get better was amplified by being around people that were great people and hard workers. So, it's surreal looking back on it with where those guys are all at and what they're doing now. But man, it was a special place to be for those 3 years.
After that third year, you spent 2 seasons as the offensive line OC at Saginaw Valley State, and so you get the big title, right? The OC, which is always exciting to get. What were some of those learning curves, for the first time being able to kind of operate an offense? Yeah,
I think the thing that Ryan Brady did for me is I came in as the run game coordinator year one and offensive line coach, and right away we worked well together, built trust quickly. He was the play caller and wanted to call the plays, and it was perfect for me because I didn't necessarily want to call the plays. I wanted to be a head coach.
Yeah.
So as we worked together, he was, I earned his trust, and he kept giving me more things to do, more administrative duties, helping with the roster management and scholarship dollars and compliance and being on hiring committees, things that he didn't have time to do that were still head coaching duties. I started to get to do those things. And I think the thing that really helped was there was an interim time where I was the head strength coach. So every place that I'd been at that point, I've been the head strength coach except for Akron. And the thing that provides you, though, is it connects you to the team, Absolutely. Right? So when I got elevated to the offensive coordinator role, although I wasn't going to be calling the plays in the game, having the voice, I'd earned the respect of the team by coaching them, all of them, in the weight room.
Right.
And I think that was the biggest piece was, hey, how can I help? If I'm not going to be the guy calling the plays on Saturday, how can we be more organized? What can we do to help this offense grow and overcome some of the challenges that we had in prior years? So that's where I really appreciate Coach Brady, was him allowing me that role and allowing me to do more than a lot of assistant coaches get to do.
No question. And we'll kind of just go ahead and segue there to Tiffin, right? So, obviously the first time you get a head job, those are some of the difficult challenges, right? That door closes behind you, and man, it's a lot of stuff that you just never had to deal with. But you had this opportunity there at Saginaw Valley to experience a lot of these things. But with all that being said, what were some of the challenges as you sat there in that office with the door closed and, a lot of questions, but not a lot of answers in front of you? What were some of the challenges that still came along with that?
Man, the biggest challenge is hiring a staff, right? You've got, I think a lot of times people that want to be head coaches have planned out how they want to run their organization. Yeah. And I had that planned out, right? That had been formulated over time, watching all these great people and being a part of so many teams that were successful. Then you get there and it's like, all right, I've got to hire a staff as fast as I can. And at that point, there was a month gap between the prior head coach and then myself coming in. And he had done a great job. Coach Reiser they went 11-1, won 3 conference championships in 5 years. He took our program to heights that had never seen, right? But you enter in and there's a month gap. 44 guys are in the transfer portal. You're inheriting a team that's coming off an 11-1 season, and there's 44 of them in the portal. So that was the biggest challenge, was hiring a staff, but then recruiting a class and trying to get those guys to come and get out of the portal and stay at Tiffin. The biggest asset was I was coming with 2 people, Zach Blair and Caleb Rufner were 2 guys that played at Indiana Wesleyan while I was coaching. Caleb played for me there, and then were at Saginaw Valley that last year with us too. So I'd worked with them at 2 different schools, and then those were guys I trusted as we were getting this thing going. And then Bennett White was the interim head coach. He stayed. So it was, man, the 4 of us were like, we were working crazy hours, and we were trying to get guys out of the portal, and we were trying to get the program started in the right direction while hiring a staff. And it was wild times. But honestly, the most important thing, as I reflect back, has been the staff we've hired. And it's the people that you surround yourself with that are the embodiment of what your culture that you're trying to promote. And it took longer than I wanted it to take. I knew some of the key guys I wanted. James Daniels and I were teammates at Mount Union. I knew I wanted him to come. I brought in one more Indiana Wesleyan guy in Cameron Locke. He was somebody I wanted to be on the staff, but then hiring people that you didn't know, going through that process, you've really got to do your homework. And I'm glad it worked out the way it did, because we got a great staff.
Absolutely. Now, I've had the opportunity to talk to many coaches over the years, and a lot of them talk about, you get that head job, you kind of got that semi-depth chart, sheet of paper in your presentation of the guys that you like to hire. And, obviously it depends on the job you get. It depends on what job they have. It depends on kind of what's going on in everybody's life. And you roll through that depth chart and you do have to hire outside. One of the interesting hires I'm always curious about, I don't even know why, but is the holdover guys from the previous staff. And I don't mean that in any disrespect, but you mentioned the interim guy kind of stuck around and probably paramount in that time of the time of transition where you got 44 guys in the portal and you're trying to get to know them and learn them as fast as you can. I'm sure you leaned on him. As a guy that's coming in, and this is the old staff, you're trying to put your own stamp on things. Obviously they had success. What thought went into holding over, the interim guy that maybe wanted that job that you're sitting at? What were the kind of things that you have to think about, and what kind of relationship have you guys been able to build?
Yeah, he's amazing. First of all, he was the DFO, man. He was the DFO, the quarterback's coach the year before, and really was integral in how they operated, right? So he built trust with that last staff, and was ultimately disappointed that he wasn't joining some guys at other places, and you come in, and the thing that I'll commend him for always is he went right to work with us and learned quickly. I was pretty forward on the way I wanted to do certain things, and his ability to adapt quickly. And I moved his role. He became the wide receivers coach, and I wasn't doing it to test him necessarily, but any test that was put in front of him, he passed with an A. He didn't pout. He went right to work, and man, he was somebody right away that I learned I could trust, and wanted what was best for the kids in this program. And that's where our relationship started. And then I think those 2 weeks where it was just 4 of us, before we had hired some people, but they weren't there yet. There was 2 weeks where it was 4 of us running visits and trying to recruit a class before, that signing day, the first February and Wednesday. Or first Wednesday, February. And man, he did such a good job through that. And I think not closing the door on him leaving to go somewhere else too. I never once said, hey, you need to stay. It was, hey, you don't have an opportunity at this moment. Come and work with us. I want you to stay. Come and work with us. And if it's the right fit for you, you'll know it, right? And man, we got a few weeks in, maybe a couple months in, right before spring ball, he had an opportunity and he decided to stay. And that was something that was big for me and big for him in our trust. And honestly, his office is on the other side of the wall that I'm looking at, and he's now the associate head coach, and he's done it the right way. So if I was to give advice to anybody in that situation, put your head down and go to work. And he was ready with evals on who he thought we could keep. He was prepared. When I came in that first day, we went through the roster and he had the answers. And honestly, he didn't have an ego. Moving to receivers, I had more pushback from the receivers. And then he goes in and they practice, the first or second spring practice. They come to me and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is great. This guy knows his stuff." Yeah. So I think that's a tough, challenging role to be in. And most of the time, guys get let go. Yeah. They can't buy in. But his buy-in right away was something that allowed him to succeed in that role and ultimately get elevated after a year of being on our staff.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome to hear that, the elevating part too. So just real quick recap: 8-4 record this past season, had 3 major all-conference GMAC award winners, with Blackman winning Player of the Year, Johnson winning Offensive Player of the Year, and Walton winning Defensive Lineman of the Year. Also had 11 selections and 7 first-team picks. Man, that's awesome in a year's work. And you may mention the staff. You seem to be very happy about your staff and Providence and the staff. But you did hire a few guys that were kind of outside, maybe of your network, I would say. Outside of the interim. What did you do to ensure they'll fit the culture that you were trying to institute? And what did you do to ensure they were? Yeah. Go ahead. You got the gist of the question.
It was all about the hiring process, just like the recruiting process. Yeah. It was defining the things that were important to what our culture needed to be. So, in the interview process, we spent so much more time on how they were going to deal with the student athletes. The 2 things that we recruit on and promise: great relationships and holistic development. Those are the 2 things that we promise in recruiting. And if you can't meet the standard that goes into those 2 things, I mean, there are layers and layers in each of those categories. If you can't meet that, then you're not the right guy for us. And we spent a lot of time specifically at a couple of positions really trying to find the perfect fit. And the funny thing is, although somebody might not be in your network, they're in somebody else's. Yeah, so, absolutely. Leaning on guys I trusted on staff. Right. Bennett White, our associate head coach now and receivers coach, his ability to stand on the table and say, "Hey, we need to hire Marco Aganyaga to come in and coach our running backs and be our offensive GA." He had played for him at Baker. So leaning on some of those relationships prior to fill your staff, that allowed us to go ahead and at least get a better pool for the last couple spots that we needed to. And yeah, it's the same. I view it the same way as recruiting. And we had to do that one time this offseason. We had one full-time coach that left. Okay. And that to me was like, I was worried in December that our team was going to leave and that our coaches were going to leave. And, returning all-star, everyone who could return but one guy. We had one starter jump in the portal. And then returning, all of our coaches with the exception of one who got out of coaching. Yeah. Those things were really great insight into our culture is setting in and working.
Absolutely, Coach. Well, we're definitely cheering you on here. Before I let you go, though, I did want to talk about 2017. You were part of that 35 class that kind of keeps popping up throughout our conversation here today. You're part of that class. What did that opportunity mean? I know it was a little while ago at this point, but what did that opportunity mean to you at the time? What was your experience, and why would you encourage others to do so?
I mean, I think I could take you through the entire 6 to 8 hours of the day. I mean, it was impactful. Yeah. And that's my point. It was one of the best days that I've had as a coach as far as my development. And I think if there's anything I could say, not just that day, but the network of people that you get access to after that with the socials that continue to go on, those are things that I think are so invaluable. And I think you go back the next year and you're at the reunions and you're sitting there and you're in a room with guys they're doing the things that you want to be doing, and access to have those conversations. But also during that day, I think the knowledge that was imparted, not just on the X's and O's, really not much on the X's and O's.
Yeah.
All about, how to navigate yourself, how to network yourself, how to grow yourself, how to be a better coach. Man, it was impactful to me. And I think some of the speakers we had, I look back and go, man, I was really lucky to be in that 2017 class. And it's great to see all those guys from that class that have been successful moving forward. It's not a surprise to me as I've witnessed their careers grow. So it's been fun to stay in contact with them, and I would encourage anybody to apply to the 35 under 35. I think it's one of the best things that AFCA does. Getting a chance to be a part of it was unbelievable.
Absolutely, Coach. Well, we appreciate you, man. We'll definitely be rooting you on as we head into the season, and then look forward to hopefully getting an opportunity to see you there at the convention in Charlotte in 26. All right?
All right. Hey, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
And likewise, man. I appreciate you spending an hour with us and kind of dropping some gems for us. You have a good one, all right?
You too.
When communication counts, trust the headsets trusted by the best. From high schools to the biggest college programs, CoachComm keeps coaches connected and teams prepared to win. Learn more at CoachComm.com.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Inside the Headset, presented by CoachComm. If you'd like to learn more about this week's episode, head over to AFCA.com. There, you can access every episode and find corresponding show notes. Remember, you can catch every episode of Inside the Headset presented by CoachComm on wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. While you're there, we love for you to take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Your feedback helps us improve and grow. Keep up with the latest news by following us on social media. Connect with us at Inside the Headset, and remember to tag us when you share your favorite episodes. For more updates on all things AFCA, be sure to follow the @WeAreAFCA social media accounts. If you're not a part of the AFCA community yet, visit AFCA.com to join thousands of NFL, college, and high school coaches nationwide and across the globe. Elevate your coaching game with an AFCA membership. You'll gain exclusive access to the annual AFCA convention, magazine, digital library, and AFCA Insider email. Stay up to date with the latest stories and news on the AFCA website. More than just a convention, the AFCA offers continuous education, guidance, networking, and more. Celebrate the past and shape the future with the AFCA. It's about fostering exceptional coaches who create outstanding teams and even better individuals. Invest in your skills and make a lasting impact today by engaging with the AFCA. Your journey starts here.